So I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff I'm seeing on the internet. So first of all, I'm going to give you a little bit of an explanation. A lot of you probably know what a black swan event is. If you don't, I'm going to give you kind of the history on it. In Western Europe, for years and years and years, all they had ever seen were what they call white swans, right? So we all know what the typical swan looks like. And it wasn't until somebody found a black swan down in Australia that they realized that all swans weren't white. Now, in hindsight, everybody can look back on that and say, well, of course there should have been, what we know about genetics and everything else, they should have known that there were black swans out there. And so that's kind of what a black swan event is. It's this idea that things happen and we in hindsight, it's easy to say, well, we know enough, we should have been able to predict that. And so I'm going to give you another example of that, that maybe you'll have a little bit more understanding, a little more application to what we're experiencing today. So the legend is that Joseph Kennedy, the father to John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy and the whole Kennedy clan, in 1929 he was worth about $4 million. So that's a pretty significant amount of money in 1930s dollars. And so he was getting his shoes shined, and the guy shining his shoes started talking about stocks and was giving him tips, and they were talking about this. And after that, he thought, well, this market's got to be way too overheated if the guy shining my shoes is interested in stocks, and if he's trading, this thing is gonna collapse. And so he went out and sold the family's fortune, sold all his stocks, put the money into cash, and was able to avoid the stock market collapse in 1929. So I don't know if that's a true story, or whether it is or not. It highlights this idea that in hindsight, it's easy to see that the stock market of 1929 was way too overheated and it was bound for a collapse. But at the time, most people missed it, right? And that's kind of how this is. I find it humorous that you've got these people on the internet now saying, well, this isn't a black swan event because we should have been able to predict that eventually we were going to have some sort of disease that was going to come along and it was going to change life and whatever. And that's exactly what a black swan event is, that in hindsight that we can see that we should have been a little more prepared for it. But this is going to be a black swan event for different industries and different businesses. And what I mean by that, it's going to be different for everybody in that there's going to be changes that come to your environment, your industry, or your business that even now are hard to predict. I think if we sit down and we take a little time, we'll be able to predict some of them. And I think that's a worthwhile project.